If you have just joined us on here right now, like I say, this is a live show. We are going to be streaming this and posting it on our YouTube page as well. So if you don't get to look at this right now as well, do put your questions in. We'll make sure we always check the questions and comments, and then we make sure, obviously, that we get to those and address them in the next show as well. So just before we bring on Dan as well and get into our Halloween horror special as we show, let's just talk about where we're at. I'd like to take a little brief look at the markets and see what is dominating the news right now. We had a pretty rough day in the markets yesterday, major gap down. Today, Wall Street is trying to recover from the big sell-off that we saw yesterday. Massive point. I think yesterday we were down something like 700 points on the Dow Jones. What is the driving factor behind that? A lot of it seems to be, obviously, coronavirus cases surging, not just here in the US, but globally as well. New lockdowns and restrictions being put in that respect as well. It feels like it's never going to end. It's the pandemic that's never going to end. Some people have been asking me about that. What's my theory about it? I'll just say this at the end of the day. We are being a lot more proactive, I feel, on testing now as well. So I remain optimistic that it's because there's more active testing going on. We're seeing a rise in the number of cases. Hopefully that's just part of it as well. But a big thing dominating the news as well, and the knock-on effects to the economy that could have if this worldwide pandemic does get any worse as well. 80,000 cases in just one day reported in the US. A lot more pain to come. Warnings by Fauci as well. However, on the good news, US GDP is ahead of expectations. We've actually seen the economy growing at a faster than expected rate in the third quarter, following a steep downturn in the previous 3-month period as well. Moderna prepares for global launch of potential coronavirus vaccine. So a little bit of lift in the market. And we have seen that today. After the market opened up, we have seen a bit of a surge in the market and a little bit of rally as a result of that as well. And United to offer pre-flight COVID testing as well in an effort to kind of dominate the post-coronavirus landscape, airline wars, battle, whatever you want to call it as well. A lot of things up in the air in that respect as well. Listen, all I'll say to you is wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, I hope you remain happy and healthy. One of the great things, however, is, with the markets is something that we can look at, we can do from home. It's not an office that we have to go to. We don't have to turn up. We don't have to open up our store or anything. Anybody who's looking to participate in the markets, has the luxury of being able to do it from the comfort and safety of their own home. Here I am in my home studio as well, broadcasting to you guys as well. And, it's the same thing with the markets, looking at them on a day-to-day basis. And we've seen a huge uptake in people who have taken an interest in the stock market since March of this year, as tragically people have found work difficult, been laid off, furloughed, all different things. And the stock market seems to have been the natural place for people to have gone to as they look for another way to generate income or protect themselves for the future as well. While this is wonderful, and, TakeStock Live is brought to you by Stockability, a premier education company in the financial markets as well. And we believe in education and we believe in the power of the stock market. One of the other things we've got to look at is what is the downside of that. And I find that one of the things that frustrates me a lot here is people just don't really look at the downside that accompanies this as well. And that's what I want to talk about in this, hey, it's loose, it's tenuous, I know, but in a link to honor the time of year, the Halloween, and what's going on here as well, I wanted to bring in my partner here at Stockability, my TakeStock Live co-presenter, Daniel Bustamante on here, who's been going through a little bit of a horror show himself over the last 2 days, but has definitely been brave, has definitely been weathering the storm on here. And we thought, how can we get into this and how can we talk a little bit about, what's going on? Dan, and horror stories and so on. Dan, it's a quick sound check with you. Are you hearing me loud and clear, my friend? From
Arizona? Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do. Well, listen, we said, well, we're going to dress up for the show. Bless him, man. The guys, let me lead this, okay? This is going to be me talking a lot and kind of helping out Dan, because Dan and I had this idea for this Halloween horror show this week, and we're like, hey, should we be really goofy and put some costumes on and stuff? And then Dan, unfortunately, got sick about 24 hours ago. The man's braving a fever. He has to postpone his options class, which is resuming today. Okay, went to the doctors. You got a test, didn't you? And thankfully, you are all good, aren't you? But you are still feeling a little rough. So I think I don't know about you guys. I think he's looking good. I do. I think. How are you feeling, Dan? What was going on? Because that must have been a bit of a shock to you. I know you're a little bit panicked about that, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So Arizona has been pretty pretty warm weather, but the other day it's got like 65, 60. So I wanted to get out to play golf, and it was a little too cold, and I don't know why I didn't wear like a jacket, but I wore a shirt, and I was like, that's it. So I woke up and the first panic was like, I have coronavirus, right?
Right.
I finally got it.
This is the problem.
Yeah, and I was like panicking because like I remember in March, like I'd wake up like in a sweat, be like, oh my gosh, like I think because it starts with the tingles, what they say,
Yeah.
and I'm like coughing, I'm like I have the virus, and I'm like I got to get tested, so when I got it done, but yeah, it's just a cold, so.
Well, I'm glad, and that's it. You get spoiled by that beautiful Arizona, Phoenix weather and stuff, and then it turns a little bit cold, and then off it goes. I was talking to our business partner Vincent as well a couple of days ago. 40 degrees in Austin, Texas, right now. I mean,
Yeah.
right now, sitting here, it's raining, and we got rain predicted for another 24 hours. But it is 50 degrees. It's actually been fairly nice, warm, but not weather I want to go out in. On that subject as well, hasn't it just been that? And again, we're all the viewers are saying we're so glad you're well and everything, and I am as well. But I got to say, that it's a shame, isn't it? It's almost like my big thing at mine is I feel that the problem and the looming difficulty of coronavirus is not just an impact on the markets, but it's on people's lives. Anytime anybody gets sick, the assumption is it's coronavirus. It's like, what happened to all the other? What happened to everything else, right? You're finding that as well. And I think we've got to remain, vigilant and, not just, protect ourselves against that, but obviously, against the other things that are out there too as well. So markets, I mean, I'll just bring it up. I'm going to pull up the charts just before, because you know what we like to do. We like to look at our charts. We like to see what's going on in the markets and so on, and seeing where we're at and everything like that. Are you surprised at all? Let's just bring up the charts on here for you, because then I can, obviously our viewers can actually see what I'm looking at as well on my charts, and also get the view of you as well, Dan. Any surprises by what you're particularly seeing in the markets right now? We've had what's this? This is potentially our third week down in a row. I've just got the QQQs. I know you're an active trader in that. Any real surprises of what you're seeing in the light of everything in the markets?
No, look, I for sure that it was going to happen last week, and I thought we were going to get a sell off, and I was like pretty heavy short. Covered all my positions, and obviously Monday we sell off. So I don't think it's a surprise. I'm curious as to why. Look, and I know you talked about the headlines with COVID and whatnot, but I think this is just de-risking the markets. I thought it would happen post-election. I think it would happen now, but I think people are just de-risking ahead of this event. I remember 2016 trading; it was pretty crazy. The overnight future session. I don't know if you remember; it was insane, right? So I think we have more of this volatility to come. So just a little annoyed I didn't catch it this short, but yeah. So
I kind of feel, however, though, that there are going to be other opportunities as we go into this. I mean, what we got now, less than a week and so on. I mean, I think we were overdue a little bit of a sell-off in here. I mean, for a start, zooming in and taking a look at the charts right here on the NASDAQ, hitting the big round number on the QQQs, just around that 300. I mean, that's a major barrier, right? That's a major milestone. I don't expect us to just breeze right through that. But, looking at like this, I mean, this is what we've got here. And let's just take this from a different angle. And take a look at this. What you've got is the potential. A lot of people are looking at this as that potential double top formation across here as well. But I think and I think that, if you measure that out, would take us down pretty nicely to probably around the 200 and 220 mark, which, around election time, could be an awesome buying opportunity for the upside. Because I don't know about you, Dan, I'm going to be trading these things the way I would always anyway. It doesn't matter if Biden gets in. It doesn't matter if Trump gets in.
yeah,
Fundamentals, the economics, they're all the same. The world is a mess. The one thing I would say about this, though, is on a warning of seeing this double top as well, is, before we get any further in this, though, we've got to get through this area here. And a failed reversal pattern is likely a continuation, or at least a continuation of the current price action, which has pretty much been ranging from that particular point. So, I mean, I don't know about you. I wasn't surprised to see that little bit of sell-off that we've had in the market. I think it looks worse than it really is. It's slow and steady, and it's been going on. But again, I don't know. Elections I've seen back in the UK, Europe, all around the world as well. This is not a natural time, I feel, to be like getting it heavily into new positions. Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't it be better to kind of let this play out a little bit and see what happens till next week?
Yeah, look, we need to sell off in the market regardless, so that some of these equities can like provide opportunities to get long or short. Now, going into this, I didn't really have any equity positions on. I was like just kind of really day trading, which I don't like to do, but I kind of had to. On the options market. So I was long like natural gas. I got rid of that position last week. I pretty much cleared my entire book. And I was long like Ruger,
right?
Smith and Wesson. But right now, like I think we need the sell off. I think you need like Apple at 100. I think you need Tesla lower. I think you need like MasterCard lower. You've got to get these names to sell off so that it provides long opportunities. Because it was just so hard. It's so hard to buy when everything's vertical. And I know you and I talked in August about this. It was the same situation. But for me, it's like like Roku, I was short. I want to get long. I like the name. I want to get long it, but I can't buy it when it just went vertical. So hopefully these markets continue to sell a little bit. And we can get some setups for long term. Like I'd like to get some leap options on Apple and Roku, but we need them to sell off. So
I brought up the chart of Roku as you talk about it, actually, Dan, right now. A great example, actually, I think as well. You know, I always like to really start doing like what we call like a top-down analytical approach, you know, and really look at what the big picture is showing me. And just what you just said there, Dan. I mean, just look at this, what we've had like this year alone. It's difficult, and like I think this really fits in the theme of the horror stories, you know. And let's kind of like make a nice little transition and segue into that. You know, it's hard to look at this and you keep seeing it. And it's very, very easy when you look at literally month 1, month 2, month 3, potentially 4 months of upside we've seen in this market, and literally a constant rally since the start of this year. Well, saying from about Q1 after the COVID announcement happened on here. But, you know, it's interesting, you know, you look at that and you're like, it's so easy to look and go, man, it's going without me. It's going without me. And you just know what's going to happen. You hit the buy button somewhere out here and then the thing rolls over. I always worry, you know, and this was an early thing in one of my own horror stories when I first got into the market, was I always found myself reacting to the market, buying after a big surge in price and then feeling like I was the last guy buying, and then the market falls on me, you know. It's hard, isn't it? And don't you think patience is such an important part of this? Because, you know, what I'm looking for right now, very similar to you, is, you know, I see great levels on the monthlies. I see great opportunity, but what I need, even on this weekly chart, give me a pullback of some kind, give me a bit of a bug, and then I really want to buy it. It sucks you in, doesn't it, Dan? You know, when you see a market going vertical like that.
yeah, and look, so I was short this pretty heavy last week, and I talked about it on my show that I did briefly. I had some technical issues last week. And even like, so it's a little frustrating, right? From like talking about horror stories is like, let's talk about like market timing. So timing's obviously everything. So I was really short this market last week, like heavy across the Qs, Roku, Nvidia, and obviously like Monday you get the sell off. So I guess it's like a mini horror story for the month of October. It's just trying to time this thing, and it just got crushed. So if we can get some of these names to kind of roll over, I think we've got some good shots into next year. But again, it also depends on who gets elected, right? Some of the policy changes, if Biden wins, will affect a lot of different equities. So I think a lot of people are I mean, for sure they're waiting. You can look at the VIX and see the hedging going on. So it'll be interesting.
I think it's back to that whole thing. It becomes just a game of Russian roulette with these things. If you're going to just try and read between the lines too much and find out, you know, why something's going to go up, you'll never know, right?
It's a situation where it's too tough to try to call it. So it's better just to wait, in my opinion. And maybe I'm just risk adverse. But I think you said it like nail on the head. Is like, yeah, it's kind of Russian roulette. Like, how do you read between this?
So this is why it comes back down to price. I pulled up Netflix here, Dan, and a couple of weeks ago, when you having a time out from the show, I brought in Ryan Watkins, former colleague of mine, great instructor, and so on. And we were doing your call, my put, which we'll do again at the end of the show. And my put, I got the story of my put. I got it up on the charts for you right now, Dan. Netflix. That was my call of that week. I was looking to take this down a couple of weeks ago, and just literally people saying, well, why? You know, look how strong it is. And again, it always just comes back to, well, look at the obvious. Okay, taking a look at the charts right now, a couple of weeks ago we were up here. Why would I want to buy up here when I could be buying down here? I always say, you know, these markets are nothing more than a business, right? And you know, I've been saying this for many years. Everybody who invests should think about things like a business. Businesses make money by buying at wholesale prices and selling at retail prices, right? That's how you have to do it. Same thing with the markets as well. I'm not saying that, hey, I'm writing Netflix off. You know, in today's day and age, I'd be an idiot to write Netflix off, okay? Considering how many people are at home. And I tell you what, I've been a little sour on Netflix since Disney Plus, but I was taking some time. I got one of those VR headsets, right? One of the Oculus headsets, and I was just chilling for an hour last night, and I put the Oculus headset on, and there's a Netflix app, right? So that's how much of a nerd I am. And there's David Letterman's show on there, and he's got Robert Downey Jr., who I'm a big fan of. So I'm watching Netflix on a giant screen in a ski lodge, basically on VR.
That's
and
cool.
I'm like, man, this is cool, right? And it just reinforced to me that, you know, tech is the way to go. I have no, You know, we're using Zoom right now, iPhones, tech. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, VR, the world that we live in. But that doesn't mean everything's just going to go up in a straight line. And when I look at Netflix right now, I think their content's great. I think they got some really good material. I think they've really raised their game to compete with Amazon, to compete with the likes of Disney. And I'm still there, but at $5.50, it's not a good deal, right? It's just not a good deal. Down at $4.50, maybe great. Down at $3.50, I like it even better. That I think requires a lot of patience. And for me, I don't suddenly see fundamentals of companies like that changing overnight. It's just that it's back to the timing mechanism. And again, I like what you said, Dan. You know, you're going to have these opportunities where, you know, you're going to be short for a couple of weeks and negative on it. And I have been very bearish on Netflix, but I've been back on the side. No, it looks like if the calls were cheap enough, I could buy some calls on this and see if I could get a little pop on it, you know. But again, going into the election, I want to keep myself a little bit safer on that. It's about adapting, really, I think.
Yeah,
you know,
we
and I know
put this trade on an options class.
Exactly. You know, I mean, and we talked a lot about that as well. So, you know, again, taking it back, the theme of this definitely what I wanted to go on here was, you know, the horror shows of things that happen over the years and so on as well. I mentioned to you, like, one of my biggest, you know, things I got into a subject was reacting, you know, more like chasing price and so on. Why do you think people do that, Dan? I mean, let's get into that on the side. Why do you think people, you know, feel this need that as a market, like, you know, markets rally? I mean, look what happened to Bitcoin, you know, a number of years ago when it hit its absolute highs, like 19, nearly $20,000. And bang, you just knew it. Everyone was going to pile in. It's like, you're too late to the party. You've got to wait for a better opportunity, right? Why do you think people jump in so late? Because then inevitably they jump in so late, and then what happens? Bam. You know,
yeah, I mean, look, so it happens to me too, even like 14 years doing this. So, you know, like end of the month, like right now, my P&L, just full disclosure, I didn't have a great month because of Roku and some other positions. So, you know, I think one of the reasons is like you look at that and you're like, well, hey, I want to like clean the P&L up or like make money. So like that kind of concept mentally forces you to look at deals that aren't really there. So whether it's like long or short, I think that tends to happen. You know, I maybe even regrettably in August, like I didn't really want to buy. I remember this, like, you know, this is how much I remember talking about it now. But in August, like you and I were buying the highs, and it just kept going and going and going and going. And we actually figured out it was with SoftBank. SoftBank was the buying all these call options on those tech names. So I definitely think that like part of the reason is like when you lose money, like you want to chase the market. Number two is like, you know, people don't have price targets. I'll give you an example. I was talking to my cousin recently, and her and her boyfriend. There's a stock called EXPI. He's a real estate agent, and they bought it like at 10. And they're like crushing. It's like 60 or was $60. And I go, hey, like, when are you guys going to sell this? And they're like, well, I don't know. And I go, like 60, 100. She's like, I don't know. And I'm like, so I think again, when we're trying to buy all-time highs or chase things, you just don't have a plan. And sometimes, at least it seems for the Robinhood traders, sometimes it works out really, really well. And then there's times where like it just doesn't. So yeah.
You know, it brings me to that thing. And while we're on a theme of like, I remember early on in my career, I look back on it at the time as a real insult, Dan, when it was said to me by one of my original mentors. But, you know, I was trading through, I'm talking about like, this is like 2003, 2004. So we had the tech sell off in 2000, and 2003, 2004, it was kind of like everything started going up again. And it was a bull market, early stages, right? You had a nice run for another 4 or 5 years. And I was day trading a lot and, you know, short-term trading and buying and having really good success buying. And it was just everything I bought, just off it went. And I came back to my mentor after a month and I'm like, look, man, I'm profitable, you know, here we go. And he's like, I'm awesome. I'm really happy for you. And I went, well, I think I've kind of cracked it. And he went, I'm going to give you a piece of advice now because I like you. I said, what's that? He goes, don't mix brains with a bull market. And right. And I remember I was hurt, right? I was like, dude, seriously, you're meant to be like my mentor. And he goes, this is what mentors are here, tough love. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, when everything's just going one way, you know, it makes it easy. And you get these periods of time when, you know, and then you'll learn to short sell and everything's on the short side, you know. Like you would have made a ton of money in March, shorting the hell out of the market, right? But then if you didn't know where it was going to turn, you'd have given all that back and you'd be on a loss right now. So much of it is in not getting attached to a position. And, you know, it's funny what you say about your friend, you know, I've met so many people who've, you know, bought these stocks and, you know, they're doing really well. And it's like, well, what now? And they're like, well, it's like the great roller coaster ride they never ever want to get off of. And I've seen it. I think one of my big horror stories I would like to share with you, and I know that you've been through this again, is not learning to take a profit. This is a huge one.
Yeah.
I'm still a little bit of a victim of this in days, because I think I'm at a stage in my life where I'm not chasing every little bit. Like, I'm willing to get into positions. I'm willing to reduce my risk. I'm willing to let them run. Like, I was in a trade room with my students this week, and yesterday we were short, right? We were short. And, it's like having a plan. You said, we decided that what we were going to do was the market opened up much lower on the particular day. We had a nice gap down in the market, and it wasn't in a position where it would get much of a rally. There were some key levels, and the plan, the thesis, as I know we like to call it, was, hey, let's try and get short if we get the signal. So we put it in, and we had a nice little pop at the start of the day, and then bang, it broke the level, and we got short, and it mucked around, and then it drifted quite nicely. And I was going for some bigger targets, so I locked in some profit on this as well later in the day, and it clicked me up, and it stopped me out for just a small little gain on there. Yet some of the other students in the room were like, hey, I'm going to go for the bigger profits, and went through the whipsaws, and then off it went. And then another day, you don't trail your stop tight enough, and you give some back. There's always a different way to skin the cat, right? There's always a different way to slice the bread. But it's important to have a plan, isn't it? Because you've got to, like getting in a journey, isn't it? In a car, going somewhere, you've got to have a destination. Otherwise, you're just going around in circles. I think one of the biggest frustrations I see for a lot of people is, I don't mind if you leave a bit on the table. What I mind is when you don't have a plan of what you're going to do and what you're going to do forward on here as well. I always say profits don't take themselves. I've seen trades, which I've had monster trades, tens of thousands of dollars, and I've let them go all the way back to break even. And people go to me, no, I'm serious, like crazy, like gone all the way back to break even. And it was because I didn't have a plan. And I think that, again, I like being candid on these shows, because too many of these trading companies, education companies, they want to tell you all the good stuff, right? They tell you all the good stuff. Oh yeah. Well, it's not always good. Right? You're in a business here where the market constantly fluctuates, and you can sometimes give a big, one day you take a profit, then it goes on another, 20 grand. Another day you take a profit, and, you think, oh, I took it perfectly. Dan, have you been through that? Tell us a little bit about one of your stories on that. And also, how do you deal with that? I mean, how does somebody like yourself deal with that? Of just, where's the acceptance come from?
So let's let it happen last week. And it's interesting. So like even yesterday, so I wasn't short the market, but I wake up and I'm like, I'm already sick, and I see it down, and I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. So it's frustrating. So if I was like not sick, I probably would have like tried to chase it. I'm like, because I'm like, I wanted this move. But like on Roku last week, so I was short Roku pretty heavy. Like I was like, okay, look, I'm gonna try to hit this out of the park. I'll have like a huge P&L month. And I think I was up like 8 or 9 grand. Like going into the close. And then the next, and I'll keep talking about this because it still bothers me to this point, is like the next day gapped higher. So like what do you do to fix that? The kind of second question is, one, try to clear your head. Like what I try to do is, so this is funny because it's led into me being sick. So last week I was like, okay, look, Saturday, Sunday, I'm like not going to look at the market at all. And I had to like fix some stuff for class. We had options class this week. And I was like, I'm just going to stay away from like anything trading for a bit so I can clear my mind. And then like, again, this week I came in and I was like, okay, like I'm still kind of annoyed by it. Like I was short the market, didn't really go my direction, and then I got out of it. So again, I was like, oh, I'm going to go play golf. Right. And so inevitably got me sick, but I wanted to get out and like just clear my mind. And that's happened before. I remember in 2014, I was talking about horror stories. I was short ISR Gino, that biotech stock, pretty heavy. So I was at the fund, and I remember coming in, I'll keep it brief, but like 6 a.m. I get in and I see that the stock's up $100 pre-market. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, right? And so the paper loss is like 80 grand. So I call the partner, I'm like, hey, Tim, what do you think about this? He goes, look, it's like such a small part of the portfolio. Don't panic. Get out of the position at the open if you want. Don't do anything rash and figure it out. So of course the open happens, and I'm like down this massive, like it's like 85 to 90 grand loss. And I'm just sitting there like, all right, you gotta be like, just a black swan event. The stock got upgraded and it's 100 points higher. Like, what are the odds, right? So that happened. And then basically I was like, look, I'm just done for the day. And went on a hike. So that's what I've always, even in 14, even now, is like, look, if I'm not trading well, or mentally, like I'm just like not confident, I just try to get away from the market, because it'll always be there. And the worst thing you can do is try to chase it. Because it just, and at least for me, it always leads to more losses. So yeah.
I tell you, one of the relates so much to it. I think having in part of your routine an ability to walk away. I would always say over the years, my biggest challenges have been walking away. It's something I drill into my students. I love it. Or being too eager to force something, right? I think one of the common horror stories I've seen over the years of teaching, over 50, 60,000 students is those classic things of going on a run, a good run. Like, I think that can be the worst thing sometimes that happens to a trader or investor is they go on a good run and they're knocking it out the park day after day after day after week after week. And then like now the older, wiser me is like, yeah, there's going to be losses coming. And then it's then how you deal with it, because you feel like you've got that Midas touch. And I've seen it where myself, like literally, months of good profits given back in a week, just by chipping away. It's very easy, I find, to stop trading. Very easy to stop trading, when you have these goals like, hey, I just want to make $500 a day and then I'll stop, and good. But it's when you don't make that and you don't want to have a down day and you chase. I think the two things here is, number one, you chase when you feel like you've missed out on an opportunity. Number two, you chase when you're trying to make back losses as well. It all becomes a psychological game on that. But I'll share one of mine with you right now. Is very early on in my trading career, and I actually went through a very long period of just trading price gaps. That's all I did. And I was trading the Dow Jones futures very early on in my futures career, just trading price gaps. And it was very simple. I had a very neat little strategy. And, I remember like I remember the numbers, man. It was a big thing. I'm living back in London at the time. Okay. I'm single at the time. I'm not married. I don't have a kid. My expenses were a lot less. And, just sitting at home trading, and the market opens up at 2:30 in the afternoon, so I'm living this like pretty chilled life. I'm getting up when I want to get up. I'm hanging out. I'm all on my own, playing Xbox, doing all that. Pretty much a bum, right? But I trade for about an hour a day, and I get up at 2:30. I'm at the screen at 2:30. I set up a few trades and I play gaps, and literally it must have been about 3 weeks. It was a really good. I'm getting in a good rhythm, and I basically got to a point where it was a Friday of week 3 of the month, basically. And I'm up, pushing $4,000. And that's a lot of money to me at the time, right? I'm like, I got all my bills covered. This is awesome. This is really early on in my career. I'm like, wow. Because it was a big thing, make $1,000 a week, and it was a big thing. And I remember going, and this is by the Thursday. Well, Friday, I'm like, I wake up and I'm thinking, well, maybe I should just stop now for the month, right? Maybe I should just say, I'm done. But then, the setup appeared and I'm like, no, my instructor told me if my setups are there to take them. So I go into that Friday morning, doing okay. And then I get my gap set up, and I'll never forget. Okay. I'll never, ever forget the market. On this particular day, it gapped down. Right. So I buy it. All right. And I get stopped out. And there was something in my head like, no. I know what I'm doing. This thing's going to turn. So I buy it again and it stops out. And I buy it again and it stops out. Now I'm down 3 and I'm like, walk away, right? And then I come back to it a little bit later on and I'm still in good shape, right? And then I look at it and then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make this money back. And I just kept buying it and buying it and buying it and buying it. Now the market shuts around 9 p.m. London time, okay? I'm still there at 8:55 trying to buy little things, and I'm taking little stop. Dan, I tell you, in that trading session on that Friday, I pretty much gave all the money I'd made back in 3 weeks just by getting attached to an idea.
Yes.
And I remember I had just the cat in the house. I mean, it's just crazy. I had a cat in the house, Jack, who's still here. I brought him over from the States with me, right, when I came over here, and he'll tell you his cat if he could speak. I remember this cat looking at me. I'm screaming at the screen. I got my laptop and I was so mad. I picked this laptop up. I was ready to throw it through the wall. And the cat just looked at me like, what are you doing? It's almost like the cat's even looking at me like an idiot. And I put the computer down and I'm like, you've already lost enough money. Do you need to go through any more of this pain, right? And I was meant to go out with my friends that night. Instead of going out with my friends, I took a book and I just wrote about my experience, and it's burnt in my brain. And it all come down to this one day. I didn't want to accept that I was wrong because I got so used to being right. It was one of the biggest lessons I learned. I'm at a point now, I guess, in my career, Dan, where I say to my students every day, like, I know nothing. I don't know what the market's going to do next. I don't care. Yesterday, my outlook was this market gap down, the market carries on through this level, is going to carry on going lower. That was my outlook. Okay. Yesterday, my outlook was I just had to wait for the signal. That doesn't then mean I'm just going to keep shorting it all day. I have to have a signal. Have you been, Dan? I mean, make me feel better, buddy. Have you been through stuff like that? And I know what the answer's already going to be before you answer it, right?
Yeah, look, it's funny. It's like, it's funny as I get older, and I've done this like more and more. And I was telling a buddy who came from Chicago, he's like one of my oldest trading buddies. I go, it's at a point now, because we've done it for so long, where like when I was younger, I did what you just said. So if like there's new traders watching or trading, every time like I didn't make money, I was like, I gotta get it back. And I was like so frustrated. But then like a lot of trading like shows a lot of like your personality, like flaws and like positives. And I was like, look, you're like kind of a person where like, if it doesn't go exactly the way you want it, like I gotta fix it. Right. So I've learned to like just be less like FOMO of things, like fear of missing out, and just being like, okay, look, I'm cool with it. I'll come back and get it. The other thing too, you mentioned, and something I try to do, like I literally just went off of my phone. Every day I get this alert on Thinkorswim at 9:30. I've had this for like 6 years. If I'm still trading, well, 9:30 my time, so 12:30 Eastern. If I'm at the desk looking at trades by then, I've either done something wrong or I'm losing money, right? Like there's no need for me to be sitting at the screen. So every day, like I literally, it'll come on and remind me, okay, it's time to get up. So I think that's important too for traders to understand. It's like, look, if you're sitting there all day long, the worst thing you can do is sit there and watch the screens. It's so easy to put a trade on because like, I'll just test this, right? I'll give it a shot, and it doesn't work.
I've actually, it's funny you say that. I've actually done statistics on this in my career, and I'm going over 15 years or so now. And from a day trading perspective, I'm talking here, not anything else. If I have not made my money, or if I'm not profitable or in a good place within the first hour, maybe hour and a half of the day, then that's it. It's either break even or it's just not going to work for me. And I've started, because of you, since I'm working with you, maybe looking at the market more in the last hour of the day, because I never ever used to. But I would always find that damage would be done if I'm still at that screen, typically past 11 a.m. Eastern. It's crazy because you've got to learn about what works for you, what your strategies are, all that kind of good stuff, right? And it's about learning about yourself. Dan, I've always said this: learning to be a successful trader or investor is more about learning about yourself than learning about the markets. How much would you say if that is true? Can you relate to that?
Sure. Like it's a really big deal. And I was teaching options class this week, and I was talking about it, is like, you trade futures. I started as a prop futures trader, but I was kind of like saying, hey, look, like a lot of you, my first students I ever taught, you guys all understand technical analysis and you understand the markets, but like, you're not successful at futures. And it's like you could show me price levels and entries and you could talk my head off about it, but like, it's just not the right product for you because of the anxiety it creates. So once you like realize certain things, you're like, oh, okay, well, look, like for them, it's like, all right, I'm not a good futures trader, but why don't I just trade QQQ or SPY instead? Like, I understand the levels, like it moves slower, and you have to recognize these things about yourself. So for me, it's like, I figured out what I like and I don't like. So right now, I just trading my S&Ps and my oil and my NASDAQ. Like you and I were just talking about it 2 days ago, like how crazy the stops have to be on NASDAQ right now. So it's like, I haven't been trading it because I know that if I go and trade that market and I get stopped out, it's going to put me in a bad mood, like inevitably, right? And I'm just going to be like, all right, look, I don't want that right now. I want like a low stress environment.
Yeah.
So I just switched over to QQQ. So yeah, you really learn about yourself and learn what works for you and what doesn't. And I think from a coaching perspective, I tell students too, I go, look, we were in options class this week. I go, everything I'm teaching you and discussing, don't take it as like the holy grail. I want you to like keep using, like make a cocktail mix, like do what works for you. Like if you like this, take this. If you don't like that, get rid of that. Like figure it out so that your personality adapts to it. And I think that's where like you get successful and you get confident too, because if you're nervous or not confident about trading, it doesn't matter what strategy you learn, whether it's yours, mine, like anybody's in the world, you're just not going to be profitable. So
I'd love to talking about that. I actually just brought up the chart here. You're for the viewers, you can see on here what we just brought up on here. This is the QQQs, what you're talking about, Dan. I've been a big trader of the NASDAQ futures, the NQ, over the years. One of my favorite markets to trade. But, QQQ is the ETF of that for anybody who's knowing. If you go back and take a look at the QQQ after these last few years, this is the ATR that we've got on a daily chart. Typically, you'd see about a $3.65, $4 move a day on that, ATR. Take a look at what happened to this bad boy, coming into mid-February and during the COVID period. Look at ATR. Look, this is a measurement of volatility increasing. on the QQQs in the early part of the coronavirus pandemic. What we're seeing here is this is an ATR that was getting up to $13.88. And ever since this has maintained a $6 ATR. That means this market's moving, guys, about $6, okay, guys, a day. That thing is moving, okay? That is a big chunk. If you actually take a look at it right now, it's just started to peak up again. We've been back over to this area here. You know, again, I'm just looking at this lower graph here where you can see well over the $10, $11 mark. Now we're sitting around 612. The volatility has changed. And, you know, this, you want to talk about, this is our final horror story. The NASDAQ is a horror story when you look at the ferocity of the way this thing moves. I love this market. I've traded this for years. I've been a more active trader lately on the likes of the Russell, but I still love the way this thing moves. But the way it follows through, but if you're on the right side of it, it's a blessing. If you're on the wrong side of it, it really is a challenge, isn't it? So what we've been talking about is how can we now still trade this in this level of volatility? You need a different asset class. The futures on this, even if you're using the micro futures on this, the way this thing moves, even on a quiet day, I feel like the options are a better vehicle, right, Dan? And focusing on less, that stops you from having that nightmare scenario of, you know, the market just running away with you, right?
Yeah. And I think, look, you know, it's interesting, like going back to it, it's like talking about like knowing yourself in the markets. It's like, if I know, like, it's going to be a volatility. Like yesterday's perfect. Like I knew the volatility was there and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not even like, I was sick, number one, but like, I was like, I'm not even going to mess with this today because if I go in and like miss, it's just going to throw me off for the rest of the week. And I want to go into November, especially after this election, and have a clear mind and be confident about the month of November. So yeah, you just really have to learn to understand your personality, what you do and don't like. And I think, again, I don't see a lot from options traders. It's more like futures traders. I came from that world where it's so easy because futures, like, you know, the tick value, like you throw a 2-lot on an S&P, like 3 points, like you're up like $300 pretty quickly. So it's so easy to go and do that. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think the lesson of today, you know, in theme of it is, you know, if you know the bad things that can happen before they happen, that, you know, that's a huge part of it as well. I know down in your own foundational programs that you teach, one of the very first subjects is you talk about is psychology, you know, and we don't have time to go into that right now, but, you know, it's something we should definitely touch on in later, you know, later broadcasts of TakeStock Live as well, because it is a huge part about it. Know yourself, know thyself as a trader. Absolutely. A regular feature that we also do every week as well, because we are getting short on time as well, is, you know, and by the way, just before I get into that, what's the moral of the story? We're all only human. Okay. Just to wrap that up, I'm never going to stand here, you know, on this, you know, just telling you about the good times. Yeah, there's the good times, but you got to understand the bad times as well. And I think that, you know, anybody who's looking to participate in the financial markets on a regular basis, doing it the right way, needs to understand how to balance the good, the rough with the smooth as well, and adapt the plan as it goes. So definitely something that we can talk about more in later shows. A regular feature, however, on TakeStock Live has always been your call, my put. Again, as generally host, you were kind enough to host for me last week when I was taking vacation. So thank you for that, Dan. I know you do host and step in on those duties as well. And a fine show it was. In the spirit of that, back to it, I will basically, I'd like to ask you, Dan, as host, I always give my guest, even though you're not really the guest, you're the co-host, right? But all right, I always like to be the man to give you a call on here. Your call, my put. Dan, what do you want to take this one? What are you bullish on? What are you bearish on? What are you taking this week? I'll pull up the charts. We'll take a little look, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm bullish on Boeing. So
you're bullish on Boeing. So BA we're going to go to on that, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look on that then. So here we go. All right.
So this may cut like, so I want to start looking, I know they're in trouble. There's some issues going on, but I really want to start looking at this potentially next month into December for potential long. Like, I don't like it right now, but I am like bullish and kind of watching this thing to set up. So I know that candle looks bad. But this is something that's been on my radar. So we tried to get long this last month. I had like leaps on it and it rallied and then failed. So I'm still bullish this name. Yeah, so that's kind of my call for the week on this.
I gotta say to you, I feel that, just looking at this chart here, and I'm going to just start with the monthlies on this. I mean, again, longer term play. I feel like I wouldn't want to do anything on it today, right?
Yeah.
But I got to look at this $100 as a big significant price point in all of this. There's a lot of psychology behind stocks, and so many people, all they see is this. All they see is the sell off, right? They don't then look at the opportunity to the upside. And no matter how good or bad a company or an economy is, some of the best opportunities I've had are when the market's literally does the opposite to what the news suggests. Being a price action trader, I have to agree with you, Dan. I mean, for a short-term area right now, I got to say we're in some nice areas right now here on the daily charts. If anyone's put a gun against my head and said, do something, I'd have to be a buyer right now. If I had to do anything right now, definitely.
Yeah, post-election too, by the way.
What's that?
Nothing before this election. So it's
no.
Everything. Yeah.
It's if I had to do something right now, though, I'd still buy it if I had to. But I got to say to you, I'd like to see how this area closes out. And I'd be very keen to see about how we react around the $140 mark as well and the $100 mark. But Dan, I agree. I think there's a little bit more to go to the downside, but this whole cluster of price action here, has got basically a buy opportunity written all over it. And this is a weekly chart that I'm looking at right now as well. So, I don't think we've got long to wait. You got to look at it as a company fundamental. Hopefully this thing starts to loosen up, this economy, the travel and stuff. People are traveling, the airlines are there is demand. I'm with you on that, Dan. And I think that, again, from a long-term perspective, from a portfolio addition, let's put it like that, I think this has got that on the long-term play written all over it as well. Let me just remind everybody who's looking at the show right now, Dan and I are not professional advisors. We are not brokers. We are not registered, okay, in this respect. This is literally purely just speculation, just for educational and entertainment purposes only as well. You are responsible for all decisions that you actually make in the market. And I have to say that, right, Dan, because we aren't brokers. And I never planned to be a broker. But this is simply opinion that we've got on here. And again, from a long-term perspective, I like what I'm seeing on that as well. Myself,
nothing yet. I'm just so just if people that are watching the first time is the way that we trade is we look at ideas that are in the future. So it's not something I'm waiting for the signal to get long but it's on my shopping list to put a trade on. So I'm closely following this stuff.
Absolutely. And when we see things, I think that we really, really like that, excuse me, I'll say it. I never mind putting a call out there. I just like people to know, because, there's always somebody looking for the quick, easy fix in this business, isn't there? They just want to jump in and take someone else's recommendation. And I've always said to people, the most important thing that you can do is make your own mind up about what you do. You're in control of your money. You make your decisions. Nobody cares about your money more than you. That's the mantra that we actually live by. I'm going to mix things up a little bit, Dan. I know I'm still kind of getting you into the world of Forex, the currency market. I'll go on record and say this last few months, the currency market has not been fun. I mean, it has been dull. But I mean, I treat the Forex market, like a longer term vehicle. I've met many people over the years who love day trading it. I think you're crazy to day trade Forex. I really do. Part of the reason why is because it's built for long-term trades, the margin rates, all of the flexibility, the way it works. It's a great longer-term vehicle. And again, you can go in with such a small size. So I've always used this Forex market more as I call a medium to long-term play. Trades I might be in for a couple of days, couple of weeks, potentially a couple of months. You can buy and hold, you can short and hold in it. Really nice market and a lot of tax advantages to the people here in the United States as well. You've got the 60-40 long-term capital gains tax split that applies to the Forex market, which also applies to the futures market. Just a little extra info for you. I digress. I wanted to bring up a currency pair, Dan. And again, look, I know you're not a currency guy, but you are a price action trader and investor, and you do understand that. And I want to bring this one up for you now, my friend. And what I'd like to do is talk about this one as well. This is a pair that regularly gets on my watch list, and it's always this is always on my watch list. This market. And what do I mean by that? This is the Australian dollar versus the US dollar, New Zealand dollar. Australian dollar, New Zealand dollars, AUD, always been on my watch list, always remains on my watch list. You may ask why. Here's why. This is a trader's dream. Look what you've seen for nearly 7 years, just ranging market. Now, the average buy and hold investor is going to look at that and go, there's your horror story right now, okay? You imagine buying and holding a market like that for the last 7 years, you'd be pulling your hair out, okay? You wouldn't have any hair left to pull out right now, okay? Because it's not going in one direction. But for somebody who plays both sides of the market, the long and the short, man, what a trading dream. I love this market. And this is a range that I've always kept on my watch list that I share with all of my students and say, hey, you ain't going to be in it and out of it regularly. But man, when you do get into a position on it, this has got some real lovely opportunity on it. Right now, we've already been looking at some key areas up at the 1.1 earlier this year. We were flexing our muscles on, like trying to lean on selling the Australian dollar, buying up New Zealand dollar. Right now, working on some key levels, literally some key levels right at this point here. But what I am seeing is down to here right now, and a ton of wide open space on this market right now. This monthly chart for me has got the makings of a lot more downside potential on it. What we have to do, and again, similar to your one on this, Dan, similar to what you were saying, this is not a recommendation now, okay? Not a recommendation now, but I do see over the next, I'm going to go 4 to 6 months, the potential for a lot more downside on this market. I'm even going to throw parity out there on this thing. You know, it's been there and it's done it before, but we really need to be breaking through these key lows. Give you some numbers on there, probably looking to be on the safe side. If this thing's trading below 1.05, I believe you've got about 5 cents of downward momentum on that we can go on this if this has taken it out. We've got nice steady action. Look at this beautiful downtrend. I mean, it's rare to see anything like this, but talk about a beautiful downtrend in the market, you know, that you've been seeing. So this one's firmly on my watch list, looking to take it down to parity. If I want to be really cautious about it and just be a little bit, I'll say, look, worst case scenario, let's call it 1.1, 1.2. Dan, what do you think of my outlook on that? That's to me just one range. That's one big range, something I'd love to exploit. You like it?
I think the weekly looks good. It looks bearish. So I like that. The monthly looks good too. So weekly and monthly both look good. So yeah.
Nice low exposure on that. Also, what I love about this market, not too volatile. You're not going to see a ton of movement out of it, okay? But it's one of those positions we can just build, we can build, and we can leave alone as well. Remains on my watch list as my bearish call on there, Dan, as well. So thank you for sharing on that one, guys. Your call, my put. We always like to kind of go back to these and talk about them and how they worked out every single week as well. Dan, we're coming to the end of our show. I want to say a huge thank you for you know, just finding the energy to come on here. I know you've also got to teach your last day of your options class tonight as well, coming up. What are you planning on covering in the last part of your options? Because I know you've already done 2 days. That should have been wrapped up, but we gave you a little bit of time to go do it. You know, what are you going to be covering tonight in the options class?
So we're going to be talking about volatility trading. So how to trade the VIX products.
Very
we're
cool.
going to go into that. We're going to go into like how to structure trade and some risk concepts. So it's been a really good class so far. We kind of switched it up where we've done it basically from like 3 p.m. Eastern to like 6 p.m. Eastern. So it's actually worked out really well. I like it from a coaching perspective. So the last hour, or the first hour rather, is like live markets. I can actually go in and be like, okay, hey, like look at this position, or okay, if Netflix is going to set up or Boeing is going to set up, let me like show you the call chain and like let's talk it through. So it makes like the class that much more better, I believe, versus just sitting in, and I'm not against like reading off the slides, but that first hour has been super impressive and people like it. So yeah.
Yeah, and also great for people around the world. I mean, we have a lot of US and Canadian based students, but we have students, and actually Brian right now, Brian Hannaford, I can see him in the room watching us live. He's actually based in Dubai, so the time there for a lot better for him. We have our students based in the UK. We have people in Singapore. We have them all around the world as well. Australia, Pete Gordon, shout out to him as well. So a great time as well, and I like that because I think a good blend of being able to teach live at the market as well as obviously afterwards is a pretty cool thing as well. And you mentioned the VIX as well, trading and doing work on the VIX. That's going to be a huge skill to have going into this election, I would think, as well, especially with what we're going to expect, right?
Yeah, that trade is pretty crowded right now on the VIX, but it should clear up after this election. So we've been talking about that pretty heavily. We'll see. I mean, look, if that thing pops in this election, it'll be really good on the short side. So it's a good product to trade. So.
I'm looking forward to it. I think this time next week, we're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to have a new president. Or an old president, who knows? We're going to have a president, right? If we don't have a president, there's a serious problem, right? But we're going to have a president, and you know, I don't know if you're looking at us from the Middle East, if you're looking at us from Europe, if you're looking at us from Asia, I don't know where you are, but it's going to affect all the world. Whoever gets in, there's going to be change coming. We're going to see different things going on. Hopefully, a dream landscape of opportunity for us in the financial markets as well, Dan. I know you're looking forward to it. Plenty for us to be talking about next week. Dan, I'm going to let you go now. I'm going to let you go and get some rest. I know you've got a couple of hours before your class starts. On behalf of everybody looking live now, thank you for joining us on the show. We wish you better. We send you lots of love as well, and we'll see you next week on the show.
Right,
thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Everybody, that was Daniel Bustamante, my co-host on the show of TakeStock Live on there, braving the storm of what we thought was COVID, but thankfully wasn't. It just seems a little bit of a chill as a climate change going on and where he is in Scottsdale, Arizona as well. Great show. A lot of fun talking about our horror stories. Just trying to give you a little bit of an idea of some of the things that we need to make sure that we avoid, some of the common mishaps that we've all been through. Again, this is a wonderful environment to be a part of, learning to trade and invest in the market. A wonderful environment to be in, but we must know the downside that comes with that as well. And a good investor and a good trader will always remember that. If you are going to get any more in touch with us as well, absolutely, we can find. I'm going to leave right at the end of this transmission. I'm going to leave the contact details of where you can reach us. I'm going to leave our email address up so you can send questions in and your requests for our post-election special that we're going to be doing next week. We will be back next Thursday on Facebook Live at 12 noon Eastern time. This show and all other shows will be rebroadcast on the Stockability YouTube channel, so you can look at your own viewing time. You can also look at the recording of this here on Facebook as well. Share it with your friends, like the page, and thank you for taking the time to basically listen to us and look at our little Halloween special of the things to avoid and how to not have your own Halloween show horror story. Guys, I'm going to say have a fantastic rest of the month as well. Stay safe, stay dry, stay healthy. Enjoy your Halloween with your friends, your loved ones. Be safe and, hey, socially distant, I guess, as well is another thing that we have to be. Be mindful of yourself and others. I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. And again, do your part. Election coming up. I know obviously in the US, big times coming up. Hopefully, you know, cast your vote. Let's also embrace that we have that right to vote on here as well. And again, I know there'll be a ton to talk about next week as well on the show as well. Guys, it's been a pleasure here. I've been Sam Evans. This has been Take Stock Live. And this has been brought to you by Stockability.com. Have a great rest of your week. I'll see you next week. Thank you very much.